our last meeting in the month of May. And our first speaker is our former president, our current vice president for education, Jennifer Okaima Piette, who is going to share some best practices on negotiating the best outcome from a lived experience. Please help me welcome Jennifer Okaima Piette with her speech, Know When to Fold, Walk Away, or Run, from the Pathways Dynamic Leadership Negotiate the Best Outcome Project, which is a 5 to 7 minute speech. Jennifer?
Thank you, Madam Toast Leader of the Day. Good afternoon, fellow Toast leaders and guests. Let me try this. You've got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your morning. When sitting at the table, there'll be time enough for counting when the deal is done. I know I'm not a singer, and I hope Kenny Rogers, wherever he is, forgives me for mothering the tone of his song. But fellow Toast leaders and guests, just this past month, my level 3 part of dynamic leadership at Toastmasters opened a new window of negotiating the best outcome to me. And as I made progress through this course, Kenny Rogers' song would just not leave my head. It was practically living rent free. For every part and every level I completed, the song kept coming back to me. I had to go on Google first to type the lyrics to figure out what exactly is this song and why does it keeps coming to my mind as I make progress on my course. And then I found the lyrics and I found different people trying to, dissect or elucidate the different interpretations of what the lyrics meant to them. The one I found most interesting is a quote that someone left on Reddit. It said, "The famous song is a piece of life advice popularized by Kenny Rogers in 1978, titled The Gambler." It basically means using poker metaphor, you figure out when to keep pursuing a goal and when to surrender or walk away to avoid further loss. That is what negotiation is all about. So in this course, there are three things that were highlighted. When you're negotiating, hoping to get something out of a situation, there is a possibility that you'll come out of it um, as a win-win. This means basically, as a negotiator, you go in with the hope that you would not only win the case, whatever it is you're pursuing, but the other party on the other end of the table also leave with a sense of victory, meaning you are not just thinking about yourself, but thinking about your shared interest in order to leave the table with everybody feeling good. Then the second point was that sometimes when you're negotiating the best outcome, there's a high chance that it will be a win-lose situation. This is usually very popular where there's a sense of competition in at stake. Maybe it's you're bidding for a contract or trying to outdo your colleagues at work just so you can get a salary raise and all of that. So when the nature of the negotiation is competitive in nature, there is a high chance that you come out of it as either the winner or the loser. And then there's the third outcome called the lose-lose. Nobody wins. Nobody really comes out feeling good. Everybody at the top, everybody who comes in to negotiate leaves feeling a bit defeated because every of the negotiators are like stubborn or aggressive or not wanting to, like bend a little just so other people can have their way. So from my own personal experience, as I don't have 31 years of Toastmasters experience yet, but I do have some level of exposure that has, in some way or the other, left me feeling either like at loss or feeling a sense of, okay, this victory wasn't just for me, it was also for the other party as well. And I have also experienced to some extent the loss experience. But for today, the example I'll be sharing I would say is the win-lose. The win-lose, I would say, was when about 3 years ago exactly, when I attempted to venture into corporate America, and I had this opportunity to work as a communications director at this company. When I joined the company, everybody was like, "You're welcome. We know you're the only one with an accent, but we are one big family here. Feel at home." But in practice, that wasn't what the experience was, because I was being locked out of client meetings. I was being muted during meetings because some people didn't want to hear my accent. And then taking the words of the HR head of HR to the bank, I did reach out to say, "Hey, these are the things I'm experiencing. You did say I should come tell you, and so we can find a way out if I am being kind of held back by my team members." So I went into this room with my manager and the HR, hoping to come out of it with some kind of solutions that would make the place, welcoming and enabling for me to deliver on deliver on results that I was hired for. Unfortunately, that meeting ended up being a win-lose, because not only did my contract come to an abrupt end in that meeting, after I've laid out all of my negotiations and my card, with the hope of getting a positive outcome, but I just was never given that opportunity uh, to find a solution that will help both the company thrive and help me as well advance in my career. But the good news is it's been 3 years. What I learned from it is to always read the room. When people tell you are welcome to a place, don't just take that to the bank. Actually, pay attention to the body language and the attitude of those around you. And if it's not very amicable, you should, as Kenny Rogers advised, know when to fold them. And if it's not very conducive, you should consider either walking away or running. Then the other thing I learned from the experience is the importance of not making promises that you can't keep. I currently work in international development field, and that's one thing they're always telling us: when you go into communities, when you talk to your clients, when you meet people around you, make sure that in the excitement of trying to talk about the work you do not make promises that you cannot keep, because at the end of the day, that will end up sabotaging not just you as a professional, but even the people that put their trust in you when they come back to say, "Hey, how about that promise?" And then thirdly, not the least of all, is again echoing the kind words of Kenny Rogers: in life, as you move through your career, as you build relationship, as you expand your network through Toastmasters, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. Sometimes running might be painful, but actually it might be that end result that will bring you a very positive outcome in your negotiation journey. Thank you for listening.
So much, Jennifer. I know I always enjoyed and loved your accent. Well, I'm sorry to hear that that has been an issue. I am going to introduce our second speaker. We have speeches, prepared speeches, then we have the spontaneous speeches where people can participate.
Happy to start with my evaluation of Jennifer. And what a brave speech, Jennifer. Not only did you elucidate us on negotiation tactics, but you also connected that to a very personal story about discrimination that you faced in the workplace. And I will say, for such a shockingly disturbing example of xenophobia, you remained like very, very, very optimistic and upbeat about the entire experience and about the impact it had on your overall job trajectory, which is something to be very commended on, because I certainly would add that same kind response to the ultimate outcome. And as someone who studied abroad for a year with a very terrible accent in that second language, and I guess if I'm honest, quite a bad accent in my original language as well, I really feel terrible that you didn't get more empathy. And I hope we all can learn from that lesson. And I want to say your singing was so cute. Now on to the nitty gritty portion of the evaluation. On the places I thought that you did very well and you might want to continue to grow in that space is just the creative, fun analogy you took between a song that, on its face is about gambling and really talked about how that can be tied to the possible outcomes of a negotiation. And, we all need to make those decisions about whether to hang on, to double down, or to walk away. So, really fun to bring that into our everyday lives. I also thought you were very consistent in coming back to that refrain as a way to provide that through line through your speech. So, that was also something that you did very well. Something I might work on is the pace. At times it felt rushed. And I was wondering if maybe starting with singing sort of, stressed you out. I could also very well be projecting, but when I get stressed out, I get sort of like breathy and it makes me feel like I'm rushing through things. So, if that was the case, you may just want to read it out loud or versus singing, or just like make sure to be very, very thoughtful about adding pauses so that you don't have to speak very quickly. And if you were going to stretch yourself, I will say I missed your visuals, and that's because you tend to really provide a great PowerPoint presentation along with your speeches. They can also be crutches, so I could see how maybe you were pushing yourself to not use them. So maybe use, counting or gestures to make sure that we're kind of coming back to your main points. But overall, really great job, and thank you for sharing that, and appreciate you.
I want to call on Betsy for the timer for today's meeting.
Thanks very much, Alexandria. We did well on time today on speeches. Jennifer came in, it was to be a 5 to 7 minute speech. She came in at 7 minutes and 34 seconds.
Can we get Randy for word of the day?
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Alexandria. We have a pretty extensive report here. I'm going to talk about the crutch words and great phrases and even some mistakes. So there were a lot of folks who were leaning on ums. And I'll mention you folks specifically because, we want to try to work on this stuff. So Jennifer, Susan, Cassie, myself, and then to a lesser extent, Venkat, Jocelyn, and Alexandria. There were also some folks who had other crutch words. Kevin, your crutch word is like, and there were some folks saying some folks who leaned on so a little bit, but generally those are pretty low usage. I do want to mention some really nice phrases that I heard today. Jennifer, you used the phrase "a new window" to refer to an opportunity, and you didn't actually use the word opportunity with it. You just let the metaphor stand on its own, which I thought was cool. You had obviously a lot of metaphor within your speech about laying out your cards, and also don't just take that to the bank. Know when to fold them, walk away, and run. Of course, you integrated that beautifully in your speech and really made us think about what those actually mean and what they meant in the song. Carol, okay,